At some point, valuation does matter. And if Tesla's sales start to drop more and more, I mean, there are big institutions that own this that probably way surpass the retail investor. And so you have to think that at some point it continues to come down. In fact, I do have it priced to come in at least down to $135, $140 per share, which again, it's at 180 right now. It's not a huge drop. But keep in mind, if we go into a recession, like I'm saying, how many people are buying, the highest priced electric vehicles?
I'm just waiting for the day that we can start buying Tesla vehicles with Dogecoin. Yeah. And then Tesla becomes a half vehicle manufacturer and half hedge fund for Bitcoin and Dogecoin.
I love it.
And then that would be that would be great. No, I'm kidding, of course.
Apple's still trading in the mid 20s. And that to me is way too pricey, especially if I think we saw their App Store actually kind of miss on their revenue numbers in their recent quarterly statement. And that was kind of their growth engine. So I do think that, again, there's more downside. In fact, if we go to the chart, one of the things, if you want to follow when the next leg down is going to start in the markets as well as in Apple, and I connect those dots on purpose because Apple is such a big market cap, there's a trend line that connects all these lows going back to 2020. And when that line breaks, it's around 136. That's when that next big fall will happen. Right now, we're trading at 144.
I do want to move on to the Q&A in more detail later, but this question has been recurring. Santa Claus rally. It's an actual thing. It's happened before during Christmas time. Is that going to happen again?
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. And the reason I say that is because when everyone expects something, oftentimes it doesn't happen, and I feel like everyone is expecting it. So for me, I never trade that type of thing.
I don't know if they're expecting it or just hopeful. I think hopeful is a better word to describe
I know.
the
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's one of those things so I've always learned is that anytime you're like, oh, in the past years, this has worked.
Yeah.
Every time I've used that mentality to invest, I always lose.
Oh.
Wow. I'm not
right now.
I'm not a huge Apple person, so I'm going to go with the stock.
Okay, that's not the answer.
Here you go. How about, can we change it up and say,
Samsung?
I think you take that money and you put it in Bitcoin. Yeah, it's going to go lower, but I think in 10 years, that's worth 10 iPhones.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you have to have personal discipline to hold it, though.
That's
this is
true.
A separate conversation, but I just want to touch on that. People have said to me, well, if I had bought Bitcoin 10 years ago, I'd be a millionaire. Would you have really, though? Because you would have sold before then, hey?
Yeah, for me, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, most people have said if I bought Bitcoin 10 years ago, I'd be, XYZ rich, but...
Well, always remember, I never buy the exact lows and I never sell the exact highs.
Right.
I just need to get close, and if you do that consistently, you make millions.
Right, of course. And we do want to talk about, personal discipline in another segment, but right now let's come back to oil. Mm-hmm. That's another sector and asset class that you follow, and you have correctly called the top in oil when even above $100 a barrel. I was talking to you and you said that it's probably going to go to 120, 130 before it retraces, and lo and behold, that's exactly what it did. And it's come back down. Gareth, it's been coming down for quite a number of months now.
Well, and bear with me as I got to get that correct. So essentially we drag it right through there, and you could see again how on this chart, if you connected the low in 09, the low here in 16, and the dip here, you got the exact high of 130, which was when Russia invaded Ukraine. And the thing is, everyone was saying, including analysts on TV all across, oh, oil's going to 200. But if you just thought about it logically, you had central banks across the world hiking interest rates. And when they're doing that, what are they doing? It's slowing the global economy.
Yeah.
So again, you take the oil that Russia produces even off the market. We know it didn't end up off the market, but that's not even close to the lack of demand or the demand destruction that we were seeing from all these rate hikes. And people have to understand that.
Let me give you a counter argument to this. We've seen the embargo on Russian oil really bring down production, at least expectations for production. It didn't have as dramatic of an impact as some analysts have speculated. Now, the counter argument is that China, which is about to release or relax its zero COVID policy in the near term, we're about to see a huge influx of Chinese oil demand, and that's going to push up prices. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gareth, I just don't see any tailwinds for gold.
Yeah, so the tailwinds are that the Fed does a 50 next week, then a 25 in January, February, right? And then they're done. they're going to have to step aside.
Really?
You're going to see the jobs market start to really deteriorate. We know it's a lagging indicator. I think you even got the jobless claims just yesterday coming in a little bit higher than expectations, meaning more people filing for unemployment. So the tailwind is right there. And then the secondary tailwind is, where are you going to put your money? Let's say we do go into a U.S. recession and stocks go into a prolonged bear market.
Yeah.
Where else are you putting your money? Where do you protect your money with elevated inflation, no Fed rate hikes, and a stock market that the earnings per share continue to drop for stocks?
I'm just going to push back slightly, because this is a counter argument that some skeptics of gold have given me this year in my interviews. People have said the exact same thing last year. Where do we put our money in light of higher inflation and a deteriorating economy, both of which we had this year? Well, if I had put my money in cash, I would have beaten everything, including gold this year.
Including gold.
I mean, yeah. So
no, you're right about that. You're right, absolutely. And I think you have to look at what the dollar did. The dollar was incredible. If you look at the run in the dollar, so the dollar rallied 20%. Gold only at the lowest point was down about 7% on the year, I believe. So it showed relative strength. But again, watch out for gold. And I will say that it's going to be a great performer.
Gold miners. Do you like the gold miners then?
Oh, wow. Best sectors. So I think you want to look towards the metals, right? I think the metals are definitely a place where you can hide a little bit, including the physical. And then I think for the most part, you want to steer clear of tech. And again, this is a tricky one. I'm a swing trader, so I'm in and out quite a bit. If you're not a swing trader, honestly, look towards foreign markets at this point. Look towards, I continue to like the chart on Brazil. The Brazil EWZ is the ETF that tracks the Brazilian stock market. I think China's had a huge run recently. If that can pull back, that becomes very, very attractive as well.
Okay. We haven't talked much about the altcoin space, but this question came in a few times. Do you think altcoins will outperform BTC next year?
Wow. I think that
Let's just define altcoins, because people have different definitions. Strictly speaking, an altcoin is anything that is not Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, right.
But let's take out Ethereum, because that's also big. So anything besides Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin?
I think if it survives, yes. And I think investors have to really think about what they're investing in, because remember, we don't even know what's a security, what's a commodity. If it's a security, which is basically almost anything but Bitcoin, what are the rules that are going to be applied? What's the level of entry? Remember, to be listed on the NASDAQ, it costs a lot of money. And so it doesn't solve any of the issues that Bitcoin potentially solves as the digital gold, right? That scarcity aspect. So if I'm looking at that, I'm more concerned about the stable coins and how does that fluctuate with them. How do they handle that?
It's a question from Onion Farmer. Onion Farmer wants to know if there are any ways to hedge a market collapse. In other words, should the S&P 500 fall, and should Bitcoin continue to fall, besides gold, what other assets within the risk asset side could possibly see an inverse correlation with stocks and Bitcoin? I know you're bullish on gold, so let's just strip that out of the equation. Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't have a whole lot in terms of answers at this point. I think you start looking at certain technologies. I know we were going to mention Meta at some point, but I think you have to start focusing on companies that have been hated on, that have been beaten down by X percentage, and that actually could be developing something that could be huge. And again, just like when everyone loves something, I usually don't. When everyone hates on something and it's a good quality name, I usually start to get interested.